Hello, Jamie from Inky and Scrappy, sharing with you today card 6 in my Ink Road Stamps Heifer Please stamp set series, Do Cows Moo? This one is a slider surprise, and I lost a little bit of footage or forgot to push record. So I get right into it. I die cut out that Lawn Fawn inside out stitched mug, and then I just used the brown distress ink that was on distress, not oxide ink, just the dye ink that was on my blender brush there to add a little bit of depth and dimension around the outside of it. And then I'm going in with distress oxide in fired brick to add the moo words or the moo sentiment all the way around the outside. I didn't need to do the inside because I was going to add my heifer head onto my mug. So you could have stamped it and masked it and then added the moos after the fact, but I just thought it was easier to do it that way. And because this is a slider surprise, I'm actually starting with my card base here, and I wanted my under area, I guess, to have a little bit of, interest to it. So I'm just taking Trinity Stamps Coffee Bean stencil. It's a 2-part stencil. And then I'm using distress ink for my first color. And then I'm going to use the same color but in oxide ink for my second layer here. And so I'm using ground espresso for the coffee beans, because what else would you use for coffee beans but ground espresso? And I'm not going to go all the way to the top, but just up a ways. And then I will take off my masking sticky notes there. And then I'm going to bring in that slider surprise die that's cut from some patterned paper. It's Echo Park. I think it's the fall vibe stack. It's a fall stack. I've got them all, I'm sure. Anyways, I die cut that one from that stack. And then I just folded it on the score lines there, making sure to reinforce those folds well. And then I'm going to add some double-sided adhesive to that bottom flap there, because that's where that's going to lift up. And I did decide to actually stamp on my underpiece before I attached it to my slider surprise base. So this is actually a MFT die. I picked it up on clearance, probably 6 months ago, and had yet to use it. It's been sitting on my desk waiting. And so, yeah, I finally got around to it. And this one is so fun. So I decided to go with Heifer Please because this card was designed around my phrase for this one. I've had the other phrase for this one for years, and I have yet to use it. It's part of my collection of fun phrases, especially farm phrases. So I'm just going to stamp my heifer head on here, and I wiggled the paper. So it was a good thing I didn't adhere it to my base or to my slider surprise mechanism before I did the stamping on the inside. So I realigned it up and stamped it again. And this one was probably more my ink pad's issue, because that ink pad is a close to my heart cranberry ink pad, and it has detached from the actual lid on my ink pad. So I have to be really careful when I stamp it, because I can't go straight upside down with it. And yeah, it just causes problems. But I love the color of it, so it's close to fired brick, so I should probably just buy the fired brick and in the distress ink and get over it, right? Someday. Okay, so now to line this one up, I want to make sure that it is centered on that piece and that that flap is going to line up perfectly. I don't want the flap to hang out off of the bottom, and I don't want it to be any of that sticking off the edge. Otherwise, it won't look right when it is closed. And I did this one the same time I did the last video, like the same day. So my lining up skills were less than par. And yeah, I was like extra careful because the last one didn't turn out very good for me. And then I'm just going to trim off that little excess that hangs off the top there. And then I was trying to decide where my sentiment was going to go. So this one is a Riley and Company Funny Bones sentiment. And so it's kind of got both parts of the sentiment on one stamp. And so I was trying to decide if I wanted to ink it right on my card and mask it. But because it's a red rubber, I don't have a great track record of making them straight. So I decided it was probably best to stamp it on paper and then cut it out and attach it to my card separately. So I stamped it with Distress Oxide ink in ground espresso, and then I added some clear embossing powder over the top, and then I'm going to heat set that so I can ink blend over the top of it. Now, if you see in the final card or even in the process, it actually looks better in person than it does on camera. Camera makes it, I also have to go back and buff the sentiment off. I probably didn't do that. And so it actually is a lot more noticeable in real life than it is on camera once I'm done ink blending over the top. So I am using Lawn Fawn's simple sentiment strips. I used the medium one for the 2 lines of text and then the smaller one for the 1 line of text. So the sentiment says, somebody asked me if I wanted more coffee. Do cows moo? Yeah, see, that's, it was just meant to be. And then I'm going to add a hole punch to the top of my pull tab feature here. And I could have done an arrow or something like that, but I thought it would be fun to add a little bit of ribbon to the top. And then I decided that I was going to make sure that this one lines up well before I took off all of the release paper. So I just did those 2 corners, or the 3 corners, I guess, and then lined it up and put it on my card front. And then for my mug, I wanted to make sure that I only had adhesive and or glue on that one flap, because if you put it on the other flap, your card will not work properly. I was debating on just doing some brown on top of that one, like just keeping it fairly white and doing the same as I did with the mug. But I decided I wanted it to blend a little bit better in there and not be so stark white, because I want that mug to be the center of attention. And so I'm just going in with my already inked up brush with some of that fired brick, and then just adding that to my sentiment strips here, cutting off the flags because I didn't need them to be that long. Oh, I see, I did buff it off. It looks better in real life. It's a bolder brown. I don't know why the camera kind of fades it out so bad. And then I'm going to pop my inside sentiment on the inside here. I did lift up that card base with some Big Mama foam tape, so it has a little bit of wiggle room. And then I'm going to pull out some funky yarn, I guess you could say, or thread. And so I ended up going with a shiny red metallic hairy thread. It's just cute. It definitely goes with the red on the rest of the card. And it adds that little bit of sparkle. And then I will also bring in a piece of twine. I think it's hemp twine. Don't quote me on that one. I just picked it up at Walmart. It was super cheap and I needed some browns. So I'm going to thread that through and then pull this one through, and then I will end up making a bow. And I did leave my twine here super long to do the bow, and I probably wouldn't have needed to make either of those as long as I did. But I never know exactly how far I'm going to, if I was thinking about doing both of them in bows, and then I decided the hairy one would probably not work the greatest. And I did add a drop of Distress Collage Medium to that knot on the bow to make it stay. Once it's dry, it'll hold it steady a little bit better. And I decided the card was missing a little bit something, so I did die cut the little steam swirls from that stitched mug die set. I don't know if those, I think those came with the original stitched mug, inside out stitched mug. And then I just ink blended a little bit on top of them to get them to go with that mug. And then I'm going to trim up my tails here just a little bit. And there is the completed. Somebody asked me if I wanted more coffee. Heifer, please. Do cows moo? And that is my final Heifer, please card project for this series, at least video wise. There are a couple more that are on my Instagram feed. I was just using up the ones that I had already colored and such. So have a great day. Please keep getting inky, and we'll see you next time.